What's up, everybody? I'm Skull.
I'm Zombie Cat.
And this is the Horror Den. I'm really excited to announce that today we will be doing a spoiler-free review of Late Night with the Devil, directed by Cameron and Colin Cairns and starring David Dastmalchian. This movie was released earlier this month, March 22nd, 2024. So before we dive into our discussion about Late Night with the Devil, we have to address the fact that there is a controversy surrounding this movie right now. A not fun situation, but I'm going to hand it over to Zombie Cat, who is a little more well-informed about the situation.
Yeah, so the big elephant in the room, this movie uses AI artwork, and obviously people are very against that right now, especially when it comes to Hollywood. It's a big issue that's taking a lot of jobs, and it's not fun for anybody. And it's like, in this movie, it's like, it kind of eats me up a little bit because it's like so small. It's like someone definitely could have had this job to cover these art pieces. We'll put up a picture of some of it, and you'll see like the inconsistencies of like some of these pumpkins and like the hands on a skeleton, and just like some of the owls that pop up during these like intermissions, like before it goes to commercials, or is it after?
It's after they come back.
After they come back, there's just these art pieces, and it's very obviously AI generated, and we want to make it clear we do not support AI content. I do support AI content when it comes to just making jobs easier, like when there's like small things like animation teams can program AI to make movements easier. I think I heard from Dune Chapter 2 they did something like that for the eyes to make them like blue, and it was just something to help the team like save some time essentially.
I think that in those kind of scenarios, when everyone on board the project who is being paid for their work actively consents to this thing being used, and as well as knowing what it will be used to do, and it's okay with everybody, then I think that's a different story. But we're not the kind of people to make those decisions. We do not make those decisions, so therefore I don't think that we have an opinion when it comes to this, at least not in the use of it. Talking about this, I will say before we dive in that if you didn't know about this, it may not even cross your mind. But if you do pay attention to these cutaways, you will notice inconsistencies, and it does detract away from the reputation that I think that this movie could have had.
It's also, it sucks because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like, it bugged me so much watching the movie, and it's frustrating because it's like Hollywood's already in such a debacle as it is, and just this stealing jobs away from a potential artist out there who could have easily done like a 70s aesthetic spooky drawing, like a fun Halloween themed drawing. It's like, just to save a few bucks, it's like, I hate it.
This is further enhanced by the fact that the estimated, I mean, it hasn't been released as of the recording of this video, but the estimated number that's floating out there of their budget, it wasn't low. So therefore, there's no excuse as to why they couldn't throw money towards an artist to actually create these drawings, or these pieces of artwork to be used in the film. And me and Zombie Cat were talking about this before we ever started recording. There are plenty of people that are unknown artists that would have probably done this for free just to have their artwork in a movie that they could put, in the Rolodex of things that they've accomplished.
Yeah. Of course, they should be paid. It's just like, I probably know some people who'd be like, I'd do it just to have my name in the credits. But
if I could draw, I'd do it for free.
But the bottom line is, we don't support it. Okay, we're here to talk about the movie. It's like, I understand there needs to be a line between, you can still watch this movie for what it is. It's like, yes, we do not support that at all, but we're here to talk about the movie, like trying to avoid the controversy, even though it is an important topic that is understandably, people are mad about it.
So for any artists that may be watching this, we support you. And your job is just as important as everybody else's. So,
Absolutely.
without you guys, a lot of the movies that we watch would be worthless. So we support you, but for now, we're going to just talk about the movie besides the controversy, and we will give our honest opinions about it, and hope you enjoy. So let's dive in. So, the plot. It's an interesting one. It really is.
It's very good. So basically, this is about this late night show host. He essentially is making it big. He's doing good, and his wife has cancer that you learn, and he's mourning his wife who passed away from cancer, and it kind of affected his career drastically to where it's a point of him possibly losing his show. And on a specific Halloween night, let's just say things take a turn for the worse.
Yeah, they do a stunt to try to finally beat Johnny Carson's ratings, and they bit off a little more than they could chew.
It's kind of just like the overall arc of the story is like what loops you'll go through for the price of fame is what I'd say.
And I think another like important takeaway is that usually at the end of the tunnel, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So overall, we really enjoyed the movie. We could not stop talking about it the whole way home, even knowing that we had a review to cover. And obviously this video is being uploaded in the future. We have, at the point of you seeing this video, it's probably been a couple weeks since we've seen the movie. So we're not totally aboard the hype train in terms of getting this out there, but we are getting it out there hopefully before it airs on streaming services. So
yeah, so you can see if it's something you might be interested in or not before subscribing to Shudder. Man, I love this movie so much. I loved this movie so much. I was very excited about this movie, and it even blew my expectations away. Like, I was a pinch skeptical. I was like, I had already seen that it was sitting on a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for the longest time, and it just, man, it blew my expectations away. Like, it is good. It's really good.
I think that I can agree with that. We actually posted a short while we were right before we walked out the door to go see the movie, and we all had like an expectation going in, and I think we all left the theater happier than what we thought we were going to.
And that was me going in with pretty high expectations. I saw the trailer, it just immediately caught my eye. I sent it to our editor, I sent it to Skull, and I was like, I want to go watch this really bad.
I remember you sending this to me, and actually I think I saw the trailer probably in February, I want to say. It was early. It was like as soon as it got announced. And my wife, hopefully, she went to saw the movie with us. Hopefully she'll make an appearance on this channel someday. But she looked at me and she said, I want to go see this. This looks great. And I will say that it lived up to the hype. Yeah. It really did. And I'm not just saying that, to get views or to, agree with the masses. If it was a bad movie, we'd say it's a bad movie.
No doubt. We were discussing this on the way home. I don't think I've been this immersed in a horror movie since watching Hereditary, and that came out in 2018, 2019?
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
It's been a minute, but that's the last horror movie that kind of made me feel this way. I could not take my eyes off the screen.
It's a premise that we're familiar with, but twisted in such a unique way. We have never seen a horror movie that takes place live on television on a late night TV show. That whole premise is amazing, and also the way it's shot, like not a found footage necessarily, but like a recovered footage from this like studio, where it's not somebody running around with a camera like in Grave Encounters. It's actually like this was a movie, not a movie, but it was a television broadcasting, and it was recorded on like an old reel. Somebody did an intro to it explaining like the exposition. And then we see what actually aired.
So Yeah, basically there's a narrator at the beginning. This isn't really spoiler heavy. This just kind of sets up the story, but he's telling you the story of the downfall of this man, and he's basically like, this is the footage we recovered and you're basically about to watch it. So that's essentially it. It's almost like the beginning of Grave Encounters 1, where he's like, we just got this footage, you know?
Yeah, it's raw, uncut.
Yeah, you're just about to see what happened on that night.
And I mean, just the idea that this actually, like, if this was real and it actually aired on TV, this would have been terrifying. Like, just that concept. Like, imagine you're just, you know, hearing your parents talk about this one late night TV show episode that was the end of the line for the show. And then it's just like this crazy event happened, and it's like nobody knows if it was real, if it was covered up. It's crazy. But they had a really cool intro to the title card. I just want to give that credit out there. The narrator's like, really, and this is what led to The Late Night with the Devil.
Late Night with the Devil.
And it's just cool.
So good. So I think we need to cut into the cast. David Dastmalchian. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
David Dastmalchian.
Right. Sorry if we butcher his name.
I think it's German.
we're not sure. I'm not sure. We know him best as Polka Dot Man from the Suicide Squad. I know he's in...
Great performance.
I'm a superhero! I'm a motherfucking super...
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody was hyping him up for being his first lead role, and I can say the hype was well worth it. He is so charming from like beginning to end. Like, he just oozes that late night host vibe like to a T.
But also, I think at that same token, when we watch the episode in question, there is almost a lower layer of desperation that bleeds through unintentionally. And that's a brilliant acting choice. It's just the fact that you can tell that he has a spark, and it definitely used to shine through, but he's like trying so hard for that spark to come back.
Yeah. After losing his wife, it's like that's when this downfall really started.
And I mean, it even states in the narration at the very beginning, like, he took a year off after his wife passed. So the show was just in limbo for a year, and then
it might not have been that long.
No, he literally says a year.
Okay.
And then he came back, and no one knew where he was, and then he just came back.
And we forgot to look up her name, but I also want to mention the little girl who plays Lily in the trailers. I'm sure you've seen. Terrifying. A piercing gaze. The second she comes on screen, I was locked in. I was like, oh my gosh. But literally from beginning to end, I was locked in. But as soon as she steps out, you're like,
And there's a lot about her performance that we want to talk about, but we want to give everybody the opportunity to watch the movie first.
Yes, please go watch this movie.
So if you are interested in a spoiler video in the future, we will be more than happy to do that.
We probably will.
We probably will anyway, but we want to also make sure that everybody wants us to do that. So it is definitely on our to-do list in terms of movies that we are going to revisit, even though we are going to be giving our scores for the movie now. And so whenever we go back over it, we'll see if the scores hold up.
I have no doubt that my score will probably hold up. Like I said, I was literally glued to the screen from beginning to end. I grew up watching like late night Jimmy Fallon. I watched Conan O'Brien growing up, so that was all like super warm and nostalgic. The Halloween vibe of the movie is just like a perfect movie to turn. This is probably going to be a yearly watch for me, to be honest. I could honestly see this becoming a yearly watch for me.
You know what the Halloween vibe of like just the atmosphere of the time of year that the movie takes place, do you know what it reminds me of? Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Yeah, like, it really does. It's
like that. Halloween is such like a big deal, and I wish that Halloween was as big a deal now as it was back then, or at least what we know it was back then, or we perceive it to be.
Even like referenced in this movie, they're having this big Halloween special, of course, because it's on Halloween night, and like a lot of the audience members are dressed up, and they were talking about like a Halloween parade they were having, and it's all just like super fun. There's like pumpkins all over the cast. Like whenever they would cut back to the show, there's like little bats that fly across, like rubber bats. It's so immersive. Like it really does feel like you're watching a 70s late night TV show. Like,
Yeah, they captured that atmosphere really well.
but also want to give props without spoilers. The movie's effects are brilliant. Oh my god. There are some practical effects in this movie that made me almost jump out of my seat because it made like I was
There's one scene that, no joke, it reminds me of John Carpenter's The Thing. And I'm not exaggerating that. That's how practical those effects were.
There are some moments I'm like, the CG kind of looked a wee bit kind of weird, but it's nothing that's gonna take you away from the movie. Like, and something so interesting about this movie too is that it's not necessarily like scary from beginning to end, but it is at the same time. Like it's a different kind of feeling. Like I said, it didn't scare me as bad as like Hereditary, but like it gave me that same vibe. I can't explain it, to where it's like when stuff does go down, I was so locked in. I was like, oh my god. Just great. Oh my gosh, it's great.
Now, something that we discussed on the way home was pillars in horror that changed the face of it. Not genre, but generational defining horror movies. And we listed some like The Exorcist. That was a generational defining horror movie. Another one that came up was The Blair Witch Project. It changed the face of horror. And then we said Paranormal Activity, whether or not you like the movie or not. Like, it did change the face of horror, which led to the birth of the things like The Conjuring, the Insidious movies, Sinister. And then another one would have to be Hereditary. That was the last one that comes to mind of like a generational defining horror movie that changed the face of horror leading forward. And then because of Hereditary, we got things like The Witch. The Witch came before.
Yeah. It was The Witch, then Hereditary, then I believe we got like, The Lighthouse, which Ari Aster didn't make all of these. He just made Hereditary and Midsommar,
But if it wasn't for Hereditary, attention wouldn't have gone back to The Witch that came before it with more appreciation.
Right.
And then movies like Midsommar and The Lighthouse wouldn't have been made or appreciated because they're horror movies that you have to research.
I feel like people are starting to get more into this type of horror. This movie, without spoilers, of course, there's already things I'm like, I wanted to go back in the theater and be like, I want to watch it again, because I'm like, there's so much little things I feel like that I didn't pick up on that maybe I missed. I'm like, I want to piece a few pieces of the puzzle together myself.
One of my favorite parts, this is not a spoiler because it's in the trailer, and D-Mac, if there's any way you could put this in, great. When you see the scene in question where David is approaching the TV screen saying, turn off your TV, turn this off now. Like, when you know the context of that is crazy.
It's mind-blowing. It really is. And I might get hate for this. I really might. But I literally think this might be my favorite possession movie of all time.
I think that's a valid thing to say.
Seeing how well it's being received, I haven't looked at the Rotten Tomatoes scores, of course, because I want to play our game. But knowing it was sitting at a 100, I'm imagining that it's still pretty good, like pretty high.
But we also don't know if that was critic, audience, or both.
It was critics.
Okay.
Audience couldn't score on it just yet.
All right. Well, I think without further ado, we should get into our scoring, and if we want to discuss more upon each category, we can. Yeah. So, to start us off, we have the story, the plot as a whole, and the overarching how it played out from beginning to end without any spoilers. Zombie Cat, since you have been heading most of this conversation because it seems to have affected you a great deal.
Movie. I loved this movie.
Do you want to start us off in terms of your scoring?
So, For story, I honestly gave it a 10. There's nothing I could think of that would make me give it a little lower. Like, maybe if, like, okay, without spoilers, this is in the trailer as well, so don't worry. There's the moments after, like, the show cuts to commercials, it goes into, like, the wide frame, and it goes to, like, a more high quality camera. I'm like, I think I would have preferred if they would have stayed in the smaller picture frame and kind of kept that same 70s aesthetic to the camera. That's really the only gripes I have with the story when it does a lot of these, like, behind the scenes parts while they're getting ready to move on to the next section of the show. But I literally can't think of any complaints. This is so unique, it's so fresh, just so original. I loved it. I loved every second of the story.
All right, so for me personally, I gave the story a 9. I think that it's approaching perfection, but I don't think it's quite perfect. I'm not saying that I have any notable notes for it, but I'm saying that I feel like if it was a 10 for me, I would know it, and I would have no question. So I just don't feel right in my gut giving it a full straight 10. But I will say that in terms of, like we were talking about, generational defining horror movies, I think that it is quite possible that one day this could be considered one.
Definitely, yeah. It feels like a landmark because it's just so fresh on, like, the whole possession genre, because there's so much that happens in this movie besides the possession. Like, we're going to get into characters, of course, but characters add so much to this movie.
So that's a great segue into characters itself. I personally gave the characters an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
My reason is the same reason I gave story a 9. I don't think that it was quite perfect, and there was definitely some standouts in terms of characters, like David. His character was amazing. And there, the possession of Lily, Lily in general, and her handler, great. The skeptic, great. But there was just, I feel like I wanted to know more. Like, I wanted to know more about each character. I know we got some pretty thorough backstory, at least on 2 of the characters, but I wanted to know more. I think that I'm sure a lot of people might disagree with me. I think that this movie could have benefited from 30 more minutes in terms of character development.
To be honest, I could have watched this for another 2 hours.
I mean, yeah, like, that's how engaging the story was, but I would have loved even more character backstory.
Oh, yeah, I know
whether it's through the lens of a horror lens or in terms of just finding it out through conversations.
Just with how glued I was to the screen. This is a movie I feel like it could have gone all night and I would have been like...
So, to backtrack, I gave story a 9, you gave it a 10. That gives us an average of 9.5 for story. In terms of characters, I gave it an 8 for the reasons that I just said. Zombie Cat?
For me, I gave it another 10. I thought all the characters were either hilariously written, like in a great way. Like, all the characters are pretty funny. David DeMalsha, he did such a good job. He plays off the charming late night host perfect. Like I said, the little girl who gets possessed, terrifying. She is very scary. I wish we looked up her name because I feel like that little girl is probably gonna go places one day.
Here's a quick fix. This is the name of the actress who played Lily, and she did a great job. You should look her up and follow her career.
Absolutely. Like, if she ever has another possession role for some reason, I'm there. The second she walks on screen, she gives you a stare and you feel it in your soul.
the last time I actually felt that creeped out just by somebody's presence, I think, was The Exorcist.
Man, it's so good. But outside of even, I feel like it's fair to say the main kind of like 2 characters, the girl and the host, but
right.
The side characters are also just really well written. There's always like the punching bag of the late night host. There's like, the guy they make fun of. I think his name was Gus, right?
Yeah, it was Gus.
And they're like punching bagging at him like a lot through the movie, and it's really funny. There's a skeptic who's like contradicting everything that's happening on set and stuff, and I just can't think of anything that was that bad enough to not give it a 10. I really can't think of something that's like, what was bad enough for me to not give it a 10, because all the characters were so good in my opinion.
Just for me personally, I can't, it doesn't sit right in my gut, like I said with story, to give it a 10, because if it was a 10, I would know.
You would be feeling like I'm feeling.
Yeah, and I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that I didn't enjoy the movie.
Oh, 8's damn good.
8 is really good.
It's very good.
But I'm just, with Zombie Cat over here giving 10s like he is, I feel like I have to be on the defensive just a little bit and justify my reasons of why it's not a 10 for me. Now,
I could definitely, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I could see a lot of people disagreeing with that. I could see some people being like, oh, that's kind of annoying. Some people, if you don't understand like a lot of 70s culture, there's a lot of 70s humor. There's an Ed and Lorraine Warren kind of Easter egg, some like talk of Amityville, like the current situations going on in America, like the presidents, and it's just chaos going on in America. And just if you're into that kind of stuff, I feel like if you understand it, you'll really dig this kind of humor. But if not, you might not think it's that great. But just for the like character like jokes, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
I have a feeling like this is where we're going to have a pretty big divide. Heading into our next category, before we do, I gave characters an 8, you gave it a 10, which gives us an average of 9. So that is added to our score. Now, moving into antagonist, our next category. What did you give the antagonist of this film?
When we're referring to the antagonist, we're talking about the girl, pretty much.
Yeah, the Force.
Because it's hard to say that's spoiler. I'm not spoiling it. I'm just saying that's we'll have to save this for spoilers, because there's so much I want to get off my chest, but I can't.
There's a lot that revolves around the antagonist of this film.
We'll call the girl, because she seems like the capsule for all of this other stuff that might be.
But we know they don't know.
Yes.
But we will explain in the future when we see if these scores hold up.
But for me, just because she was so terrifying, once again, I cannot gush about this actress enough, how creepy she was. I gave it a 9. Like I said, this might be my favorite possession movie, so for me to say something like that in a genre that I'm not like the biggest fan of, that's a big step for me. So I was like, she gave me the creeps, the jump scare with her, which is unfortunately kind of shown in the trailer, was terrifying. That actually got a jump out of me and our editor. We both kind of,
Yeah, I jumped it for sure.
That was a good jump scare.
Okay, maybe we don't have a divide that much, but I'm still going to have to justify my stance. I gave the antagonist a 7.
That's fair.
I think it was a solid antagonist. Now, when I say a 7, I am not saying that it is slightly above average. I am saying it is a solid antagonist choice. Now, I only say that because there are a lot of possession films out there, and I'm not saying that they didn't reinvent the wheel by any means, but they added.
You're kind of implying it's like, how many times have we seen a possessed?
Yeah, like there was a good combination of traditional possession horror tropes as well as some new twists, and I'm giving them credit where credit is due. It is well above average in terms of what they did. Now, I just could not justify going any higher than that.
That's fair, because like I was even just mentioning, it is a possessed little girl, but it's like, to me it was just the fact that they did it so fresh. And for me, a person, like, I like possession movies, don't get me wrong, it's just, it's not my favorite genre in the world. But so,
then again, we can't really talk about what our favorite is because we love slashers a lot.
And it was just good, just the way they executed it and how scary they made it. It's like, that's a big thing for me when I watch the millions of possessed little girl movies. It's like, it's just not really that scary, but it's more of like the build up to the possession kind of stuff is normally scarier than the girl. But in this movie, this thing is sinister. It is downright spine chilling.
I definitely think that this was the best interpretation of possession since The Exorcist.
Yeah,
Hands
that's
down.
very fair.
So for antagonist, I gave it a 7. You gave it a 9, which gives us an average of 8. So that is now added to our score. Heading into our last 3 categories, we have humor. So humor was actually pretty relevant in this movie.
It was.
So because of that, the 1970s humor element that was part of the late night TV shows and still is to this day, as well as some like behind the scenes. There's a difference between on screen and like behind the scenes
It was
footage.
like what I was mentioning earlier, like
with the camera.
I was saying that's kind of just a minor gripe to where it's like they go into like an HD format almost
like The Conjuring.
Yeah, that kind of bugged me a little bit. I'm like, they should have kept the 70s camera style going when it was backstage too. That would have kept it more immersive. So it was like maybe somebody was filming like these characters while they were back there or something.
So, there's a lot of humorous parts in this movie. If you've seen movies like The Conjuring and stuff like that, you're kind of familiar with this level of humor in terms of like how they use humor not in a take away from the horror aspect, but rather make these characters more likable, make the situation more relatable.
And it makes sense too, being a late night show.
Right.
He comes out and he's given like his, how night show hosts, once they come out, they give their cheesy like jokes revolving around politics, sports players, celebrities, and it's like, if you know a lot of like 70s culture, if you're a little bit younger, you might not get some of the jokes, but
Younger, like we're not young.
I know, but we know a lot, at least about when it comes to the horror side of thing, and I know a little bit about like some of the presidential jokes that were made and stuff. That was really funny, and like some of the sports jokes were all related, and like we mentioned earlier, they do a little like Amityville thing with the skeptic, and they bring up Ed and Lorraine Warren. The skeptic's like, oh, they were too scared to talk to me, pretty much. But I'll let you finish.
It's one of those things that because of the people we grew up around, and our parents and our grandparents were around at that time, and we were raised by people who were from around that time, we get more than probably the average person our age. So do your research, and if you love this kind of stuff, you will love it, period.
Yeah, that's fair to say too. We've consumed a lot of like 70s content.
Like I've said in a previous video, my love of horror stems from the 1980 films, before that even, where my brothers and my brother and my cousin showed me these horror movies at an early age, but they were the cheesy slashers like Friday the 13th that still hold up to this day in my opinion, but that's where my love from horror comes from. So I understand the time period a lot, especially through the lens of horror movies. So because of that, I gave humor an 8.
Yeah,
I think it is a very good humorous take, in a good way, and it doesn't detract from anything else.
It's intentional humor, it's the jokes, like whenever maybe something spooky happened and the audience is getting kind of like, he kind of has to come down and be like, oh, like here's a funny joke to calm everybody down, and it's like, oh, it's part of the show almost. But yeah, lots of great jokes, especially with the little punching bag character I mentioned, Gus. Like, he was really funny. He ain't for all this demonic stuff, so he's a funny character to keep up with. There's a lot of just good humor in this movie if you understand the jokes.
So what'd you give it in terms of humor?
I gave it an 8 as well.
All right.
To a T. It's really good.
Finally, we agree on something. So I gave it an 8 for humor. You gave it an 8 for humor, which gives us an average of 8. So that is now added to our total. Second to last category, and honestly, what I consider the most important category and what I look for in a horror movie, scariness. What did you think about scariness? How scary was this movie to you?
This movie honestly scared me pretty bad. Like I said, I really don't think. We were discussing like a movie like Smile. The movie Smile scared me pretty bad, but like a movie that's gotten under my skin a little bit was Hereditary. This is the first movie I think since Hereditary where I just felt a certain way. It was like this weird nostalgic Halloween fun feeling, but at the same time there was this sinister feeling in the background of this movie that I could not shake. And it's like building up this anticipation to this girl coming out on stage, because obviously from the trailers that's what's gonna happen. And it's just, man, I when this movie gets scary, there's some really good scares. Once again, great practical effects. The girl is terrifying. There's a lot of exciting stuff that happens. But it takes a long build up, so I could understand some people being like, it's not the scariest movie ever, but that's fine, because I don't think it's gonna be that way for everybody.
So what scored you give it?
I gave it a 8.
So an 8 for scariness. That's not too bad. That means you found it scary.
Oh, I did. I guess I was talking about the one. Jump scares don't typically get me anymore, but the one with the girl, that literally made me bounce out of my seat a little bit. When a jump scare is done right, that was a good one.
I'm pretty weak when it comes to jump scares. Not in terms of actually being scared, but like jumping, like making me jump. A terrible movie with a jump scare can make me jump. But that doesn't mean like whenever it's over, I just jerked. It's just, oh.
That's the thing. Jump scares aren't always a bad thing. It's like, make what I'm jumping from actually scary. Like, when this girl does something so freaky and it's a jump scare, it's like, I'm actually scared. It's like, oh my God.
I will say, I don't think that this movie relied on a lot of the tropes that we're seeing a lot in paranormal movies now, where the jump scare doesn't come from what you're seeing on screen. It comes from the sound and the music, like, spiking through the roof.
Yeah, it's not none of that, like, fake, just, like, piano banging, like, kind of sound, or, like, just
where it's dead
jolt.
quiet and all of a sudden,
like, with this, it's kind of just, like, it dwells for a while, and it's, like, it just builds up. So perfect. I loved it. It really got under my skin. Especially once you get towards the middle to the end of the movie. Man. Fun.
This is my category. This is what I look for. So I'm a little brutal when it comes to the scariness of a movie. I gave it a 7. I gave it a 7 for scariness.
That's fair.
I think it's above average in terms of horror movies that I've seen on a regular basis. I definitely think that it is a solid movie if you're looking for a good scare. I can imagine under the right circumstances, like late at night during Halloween, you know, you're sitting with your significant other or just your friends, and you're wanting to be a little creeped out. I think that it's a perfect choice.
Oh yeah. This I mentioned on the way home. I was like, I might have mentioned it earlier, but this is probably going to be a yearly Halloween movie for me. The YouTuber 3C Films like said it perfect. This is a perfect movie for turning on, like, say it's Halloween night, you're decorating, and or you're either just handing out candy, just kind of having it playing in the background. It's such a just vibe movie like that. It's almost like playing the original Halloween on Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Trick or Treat, something like that. It's just, it oozes that atmosphere of Halloween, like that nostalgic Halloween feeling from when you're a kid.
So, you gave it an 8 for scariness. I gave it a 7. That gives us an average of 7.5, and that is now added to our total. Last category, experience. How did we enjoy the movie as a whole? Now, this is where I feel like I was more than generous. I gave this movie a 9 in terms of experience. I do not think it was perfection, because if it was perfection, I would know. In my opinion, if it was my opinion of perfection, I would know. So therefore, I give it a solid 9. I definitely think it is a generational defining horror movie, or at least it will be in the future. And I think that leading forward, people will look back on this movie and say, you went to see that in theaters? That's crazy.
That was the first thing I said when I walked out. I was like, I feel like I just watched something really special. It's almost like, imagine if you saw Halloween like in theaters when that came out. My dad did.
Yeah,
So
I remember that conversation.
He had that experience, so it's
like my mom saw The Exorcist in theaters. Like, that is crazy to me.
I can imagine this movie becoming like, I hope it really doesn't become like an underground being that it's like indie. I really hope this movie blows up. Speaking of that, just a little side topic. I'm so happy with how well the indie horror genre is doing. Like, We had Skinamarink, which of course is 50-50 with people not getting into that. But
Still haven't seen it.
Terrifier 2 that had such a small budget and it freaking blew the water out when it came to the profits on that, which is so awesome. Immaculate just came out. That's apparently doing very well. And then this came out and it's also doing very well. I'm like, man, indie horror is doing better than like
I think that people are tired of big horror. Like
it's almost like we were talking about earlier with like A24 films and like by Ari Aster and a lot of those like deep thinking horror movies. It's like this movie has plenty. I might have said this earlier, but this movie will leave you won't have all the pieces once it's over.
No.
I'll literally as soon as we cut the cameras, I'm gonna instantly start theorizing on stuff in my head. I can't wait to watch like breakdown videos and stuff because I'm not a professional at that. I normally have to I can piece some stuff together on my own, but I like to watch, and once it's like somebody who's like a genius when it comes to piecing stuff together, then it really clicks and I love it even more.
So, in terms of experience, what did you give it?
9 as well. Like,
Meow.
damn near perfect. It's almost hard not to give it a 10, but there's just little here and there issues to where I'm like, that keeps it from being perfect, because it's like the minor gripe with the camera change here and there. I said some of the CG looked a little rough here and there, but man, it's good. It's so good. It's like, I can't justify giving it a 10 because I don't think it's perfect, but it's close. It's on the verge of being perfect.
So you gave it a 9, I gave it a 9, giving us an average of 9 for our final category. So now that we're done with our categories, our final breakdown of our rating is for story. Late Night with the Devil has a 9.5. For characters, a 9. Antagonist, 8. Humor, 8. Scariness, 7.5. And experience, 9. I think that is a really good score and probably our highest rated score thus far.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely our highest score so far.
So definitely check out the movie. Definitely worth the watch. Definitely worth the purchase in the future. If you disagree with us, feel free to tell us.
Also, if you don't want to commit to, like, say, buying it, I don't know how Shudder operates when it comes to, like, DVDs necessarily. So at the worst, just maybe get a free trial to Shudder, just try it out, but I don't think you'll regret it. This movie, the high review scores aren't a joke. Like they're there for a reason this time around.
We got a great deal on the tickets because of the day we went to see it on, but if we had to pay full price for this or even more,
I would love this.
Hands down would have done it.
I would happily go see this again, to be honest.
This is a movie that I'd pay full price for.
Easily.
Like as soon as it was available, I'd do it. So with that in mind, how about you watch it? Let us know your opinions. And whenever it comes to Shudder, and if you see this beforehand, come back to the video. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if we were a little too critical or a little too lenient in terms of our scores. So now that we're done with our scoring, now it's time for our game that we do with every movie review, where we try to guess the current Rotten Tomatoes score.
I'm sitting at 1 point.
Yeah, you're sitting at 1 point. Yay.
So I'll let you guess first.
In terms of Rotten Tomatoes score, I think that critics gave this a 97, and I think that audiences are sitting at a solid 95.
Okay, for me, I think critics, because this movie was sitting at a 100 for a really long time, but now that it's out to the public, I'm gonna say a 98 from a critic perspective, and maybe a 89 from the audience. That's my guess.
Ooh, so we're really close on our critic score.
It's hard. It would be so hard for me to believe it's any lower than that. It's so good.
D-Mac.
Skull, you nailed the critic score at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, so
Oh, check out these guys.
I was 1 point off.
Haha.
but Zombie Cat over here was closer to the audience score, which is actually an 83%.
Wow, that's low,
It's not really that bad.
but it's lower than
It's
we
not
expected.
bad, but lower than I would expect it too. I mean, so far it has pretty much unanimously been critic scores higher by some degree.
But see, that's so weird because, in the past,
At the
before we
same
started this
time-
channel, it's always been audience scores been higher. So it's weird.
At the same time, I feel like, not judging anybody, but I feel like some casual audience members who might just be looking for a typical jump scare movie, maybe a lot of people went into this expecting like the possessed little girl movie like we were talking about. Once again, that's fine if that's what you're into.
Right. So, all right, that's a little unexpected, but since I got the nail on the head in terms of critic score and you were closer to audience score, I say that we call it an even split. We both have a 0.5 added to our total score.
So I'm at
1.5.
and you're at a half.
That's so sad. Maybe I'll beat you one day. Maybe. So, like always, make sure you hit that like button, help us out. Leave a comment on what you think of the movie, and if you agree with us, disagree with us, just let us know how we did in the review. Any criticisms are welcome. Also, we have an Instagram at the Horror Den channel, as well as a Patreon, which here are our patrons.
Woo!
Yeah. All proceeds from our Patreon, like always, will be recycled back into the channel, and we will be buying new equipment with that to make this experience better for us and for you. And if that ever changes, you will be the first to know. Our tiers right now, at the point of recording this video, are $5 and $10, or if you want to give more, you can. For $5, you will get your name added to this wonderful list that has appeared on screen magically. So please give us some support if you feel the want or the need to. But other than that, I think that we are all wrapped up here with Late Night with the Devil. So just remember, stay spooky out there.